It was all taken out. Let's do another one, okay? In this next clip, a little bit shorter, Prime Minister Netanyahu responds to allegations that Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza. Take a listen.
We're not carpet bombing Gaza. If we wanted to, everybody's saying you want genocide. We can carpet bomb Gaza in one afternoon, and of course, that would be a horrific number of casualties, and we don't do that because that's not our policy. Our policy is aimed to eliminate Hamas, but using the tactics of war that effectively no Western army has used. And I'm saying, I'm not condemning them. I'm not judging Churchill, contrary to Tucker Carlson. I think he saved Europe. I think to paint Hitler as the aggrieved party and Churchill as the villain is absurd. I mean, it's absurd. Okay, he's doing that to, I'm very proud to be in that same category. That if that's what he says about Churchill and Hitler, then he's got the whole thing reversed, and he does. So the idea, the problem that we had was that we sought to roll back the invasion, this violent massacre by these monsters who murdered 1,200 of our citizens, raped our women, then killed them, beheaded our men, burnt our babies, took over 250 hostages, grandmothers, grandchildren, to the dungeons of Gaza, where they hold them and starve them, and killed some of them. Who is Tucker Carlson defending here? Who is he defending? I mean, these are people who chant with the Iranian patrons and their colleagues in Hezbollah, death to America, death to Israel. And why do they say that? Because they're after you. They want to destroy Western civilization. They want to destroy everything that America stands for. The open society, the liberties, the freedoms that you have, they detest that. And they say, what's standing in our way? Israel.
I mean, let's face it. If Netanyahu wanted to carpet bomb Gaza, if they wanted to just destroy everyone and kill their own hostages, they could have done it, and they haven't done it. And there was nothing clearer about this whole Gaza situation than seeing them all celebrate that the war is over, because they hate the Hamas. And of course, they can't let Hamas know how badly they hate these terrorist factions, because why? Well, because then they'll be the ones getting killed, like we showed you at the beginning of the show. So you see, this is absolute, the fiercest terrorism. It is terrorizing for every Palestinian really to be in their grasp, except that apparently they vote them in. Some of them celebrated as they did what they did. I mean, you don't have to be a supporter of them. You would maybe not need to celebrate what you see. No. Now here's Candace Owens, and she's a complete joke as well. A complete and utter flaming nut. And she chants death to America, and she's calling this simply a chant. She talks about this simply being a chant. Take a listen.
When the leader of Iran says death to America, why doesn't that concern you?
That's a chant. And by the way, I want to be very clear. Why are they chanting death to America? Why are they chanting that?
Candace Owens is a joke, okay? Since when is calling for the destruction of another nation over and over again for 4 decades just a chant? If it's just a chant, why is it on their ballistic missiles? Why is it etched on the walls of their parliament building? And why do they have a literal national holiday called Death to America Day? Maybe because it's not symbolic, rather it is a state policy. What about the Klan, Candace, the Triple K? What they were saying, was that all just chants? What about the Germans in the 1930s who chanted Heil Hitler? Were those just chants too, Candace? You don't chant something for 40 years as national policy unless you mean it, okay? It's not just words, it's an ideology behind those words. And their ideology is fundamentally at war with everything that America and the West stands for. And we don't say that, they do.
She's pure insanity. That's what it is. She talks about, with a straight face, I might add, that it's plausible that Israel has a plan to kill 7 billion people. And that Kanye was right about the Jews. Then flashes a big grin and throws to her sponsors, she's a nut. Take a look.
It's never too late to say Kanye was right. Never too late. And I'd like to say that Kanye was right. It's behavior. It's how they treat people. It's statements like that, like just pretending like we're just making things better when we do an ethnic cleansing that was pre-planned. We're just better. We should get a peace prize. It's coming to an end. You can feel it. Like I said, unless they've got a plan, and maybe they do, to kill 7 billion people, our memory will not allow them to just move along from what happened here, a true evil. Anyways, before I get to some of your comments, I see that we are almost up on an hour. Go to some more of our sponsors.
You know, podcasters all over North America are just sick to death of her. And you cannot go very far on the internet without finding people just bringing Candace up and noting how crazy she is. And, you know, I just finished, I watched, just research an entire interview with her, basically interviewing her husband. And I'm like, what is this guy thinking of this nut that he married? They do make some sort of sarcastic remarks that are a bit telling. They never had, before getting engaged, they never had a romantic talk, apparently, or anything. I mean, is this an arranged marriage? Is it like, let's just get married because you've got money and I'm a crazy American and you're attracted to me? But like, they get married. This guy who's quite brilliant and kind of more moderate, nonetheless, I guess they must have some opinions that are the same. Basically, she's just creating havoc. And my gosh, people want to sue her all over the place, especially Macron. So she's a nightmare. And I want to show you one more clip from Tanesh Peter talking about Candace being demonic.
And Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize, by the way, for the planned ethnic cleansing so that they could profit on the land and turn it into a beach town. So let me say this. This is our never again, okay? This is a Holocaust. A Holocaust just happened. A real Holocaust just happened. And we will never forget this. You need to tell your children what happened in Gaza. You need to tell them exactly who did it, exactly whose families were involved in this. And when you hear in the future somebody tell you, like, we're going to Gaza Beach for a vacation, you need to look at them like they are the absolute vermin of our society, because they are. They are. Their children will be cursed, okay? If you go and you play in the sand where you know that your forefathers planned to mass murder children, you will be cursed. Every person who steps foot on that, every family that is set to inherit what they did, they will be cursed. Your children's children will be cursed. Gaza belongs to nobody but the Palestinians. So when you begin to move the Israelis in there, and when the Trump hotel gets built on there, I caution the rest of the world to stay far away from that cursed land, because something is coming. You can't commit that much evil in broad daylight and not think it's going to come back to haunt you. Anyways,
indeed. Wow. Kukala. There ain't not going to be no Trump hotel in Gaza. They're not moving Israelis back in there. They're not putting Jews back in there because they're not safe. It's the stupidest, craziest thing of all time. And you know, just a few days ago, Candace was able to kind of admit what we've been saying on this show for a month since the passing of Charlie Kirk. And we just want to thank her for her brilliance. Let's watch.
I can tell you the part that he is telling the truth about is that Charlie's neck indeed did stop the bullet without question.
Wow. Thank you. I'm just wondering if perhaps Candace is watching the show, because we reported on that very close to a month ago when, in fact, his pastor, Turek, had said he had spoken to the surgeon that had said this. This was right away. But Candace had her ideas. People could have been in the pipes underneath Charlie, all kinds of, things coming from the back. Oh, they took down the footage that kind of belonged to them that they then turned over to the FBI, and that was a big problem. And by the way, just so you know, Charlie Kirk was not going to be becoming Catholic. Hopefully she's got that down. I think she eventually got that after she kind of made all of these suppositions. She just changes like the wind. Lies, lies, lies. And that's pretty much what's been going on. And another crazy dude in this world is Mamdani. And before we get to our guest, a very incredible guest that we have today to just talk for a few minutes about what is going on with Mamdani and with Israel, the truth about Israel. Let me go here. First of all, I will read you. So Zoran Mamdani claimed he was black on his college application. Now he says it was because he's African American, because he was born in Uganda. I wonder if I can get stuff, because I'm African American too. I was born in Uganda, Mamdani. And so if he can be African American, one problem, he wasn't even a US citizen at the time. Either way, it's fraud. So look at this. Mamdani Zoran Kawami, ethnic group description, black, non-Hispanic. He's not black. This is not, no. Another really sad thing about Zoran Mamdani is that he says as mayor, he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he traveled to New York. So how much you want to bet that Mamdani and Prime Minister Carney from Canada would actually probably be friends? I bet you they talk. I bet you anything. They would both. So there's this movement, we'll just arrest President Netanyahu. Unbelievable. This guy, he hates the Jews. Earlier today, I was able to interview Todd Sheets, and this is how it went down. My guest today is Todd Sheets. He is the author of the newsletter on wealth and progress, currently available free of charge on Substack, which is also available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And the book, 2008, if you all remember this, the big housing crisis, What Really Happened? Well, if you want to figure it all out, this is the guy to speak to. And Todd, we welcome you to the show. Thank you very much. You have a prestigious career. There's so many things I could read about you and all of the awards and things like that you've won. You truly understand finance, even though we're going to be talking about a number of different items today. But 2008, did we learn our lesson? Did the government learn their lesson?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. And that's part of the reason, or maybe the main reason why we're now in an affordability crisis, because they went back to the same playbook that effectively pushed us into the housing bubble and the collapse. So this is something I've written about in the book and in the Substack pieces. Here in America, we had a 100-year period of time, which I've called the golden age of housing, where the housing markets were like the cornerstone of the American dream. The idea was, you start off early in your career, you buy a starter home, you move up, you build some wealth. And this was a way how families, not only had a nice place to live, a nice place to raise a family, but also a way of starting to build some wealth and that kind of thing. And the key to that period was that market dynamics did this amazing job of balancing the key ingredients of housing affordability, which is the price of a home, the income of the buyer, and interest rates. And these things all kind of moved with inflation, more or less, for this 100-year period of time. But then we get to the late 1990s, and beginning in 1998, we have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two huge government-sponsored housing enterprises, which decide, with the support and blessing of their Washington overseers, that if they can expand their mission dramatically and bring even more low and moderate income home buyers into the market, that this will be this wonderful thing for helping them build wealth. And I think that their intentions were good. They didn't mean to do any harm, but what they did was they changed these dynamics of how the market worked. Their growth rates doubled from 1997 to 1998. stayed at this elevated rate for the next 4 years. And what that started to do was push housing prices well above their historic relationship to inflation. And then the Federal Reserve came in and lowered interest rates after the technology stock bubble collapsed in early 2000. And that only added fuel to the fire. That took what used to be a get rich slow market and turned it into a get rich quick. I mean, people were buying homes and trading them like they were stocks or gold or something like that. And it brought all these people unsuspectingly into a market that was turning into a bubble, which collapsed, led us into the financial crisis and the Great Recession. Unfortunately, having failed to learn those lessons, when housing prices started correcting back down towards their long-term average to inflation, which would have brought the system back in balance, the Fed went back into this super low interest rate environment throughout the 2010s. That turned this correction around and started pushing housing prices up. And that's left us where we are today, where we're sitting in the midst of an affordability crisis here. If you are young and starting out in your career and you haven't owned a home for a long time that you can sell and trade in to use to afford a new one, you're basically out of luck in trying to buy a home in this market. So there's a great deal of frustration about the housing markets here. And I think it's largely because of having failed to learn these lessons.
I've sure heard about this from my kids who can't afford to buy a home. And my very first home up here in Vancouver, I had to put $3,200 down and I got a mortgage. And the mortgage was at a low rate, like over 20 years, very affordable. That same place, I think I bought like $56,000. That condo unit, which was old at the time, I'm pretty sure it would be worth 400 or 500 or 600,000 Canadian dollars now. And so the kids can't get in. They can't get in for, and parents, you're juggling what you invested in. You're juggling the home you have. So I get what you're saying. Is there any hope? What would the answer be to all of this?
Yeah, well, I think the answer is we've got to get the government out of the business of trying to stimulate the housing market, the asset markets, and those kinds of things. Give this some time to readjust. There's a couple ways the adjustment can take place. One is housing prices could drop significantly again. That would be a very painful way to go through this, but it would make them more affordable. The best way to get there is to reinvigorate economic growth so that we start getting incomes growing faster than the rate of home appreciation again. And that starts to solve the problem. While we do that, we also have to be careful on the inflationary side, because if we push the Fed to lower interest rates too much and the printing presses get going and interest rates run up, then that will make these affordability issues worse. So I think it's non-inflationary economic growth and trying to grow our way out of the problem is the best and easiest way. The unfortunate news is that's not going to happen overnight. There's no quick fixes to a problem that's been created, over a long period of time like this one has been.
Before we get to talking about Mamdani, do you think Trump's the right man then, with his business expertise and, the art of the deal? Is he the right man to help America, at least while he is in power, to do something about this?
Yeah, I actually think he is. I didn't vote for him the first time. I did vote for him the second time. And I think what's happened in America and throughout the world is we've seen an extraordinary failure of leadership by the political class. This includes both conservatives and liberals, although liberals have tended to control the agenda over the last 15 years or so, in the United States anyway. And this extraordinary failure of leadership has left us with anemic growth rates, significantly increased debt, and enormous budget deficits, which are, a great threat to the future growth, prosperity, and upward mobility of the country. And there's also a range of social problems that go along with that. If we talk about Mamdani, if we talk about Israel, we'll get into some of those kinds of issues. But I think there was definitely a need, which the American people sensed, that we need somebody from outside that political class, outside the system, who's not afraid to come in and buck, maybe punch back a little bit.
Bust it up.
And I mean in the nose, not by violence, but to take it on head on in a way that hasn't happened for at least 50 years here. And there's a number of things Trump does. Yeah, I think he was. And there's some things he does that I don't agree with, maybe a lot of things. But I think in the aggregate, we needed somebody like this to shake up this trend that we were on, which was going to, or is, if we don't turn it around, is going to change the dynamic of the American dream, lead us into a place like where Europe is, where you have this stagnation and you get into this tax doom loop where you keep spending way more than you can afford to, raising taxes. And over time, you choke off growth. And if you choke growth off, the game is basically over.
Wow. I'd love to show you a clip of Mamdani. I mean, everyone's talking about him. This is very scary. He says things out loud that we're shocked at, and apparently he's leading in the polls, I think, if that's still correct today. But this guy's off the charts, not our kind of people. And, he's doing well. But this is a clip, an older clip from what I understand, and giving some of his views. Take a look.
We came here to remake this state in the image of our people.
Wow. So was it COVID time, or what was the red scarf? An Antifa meeting. Okay, we don't, I mean, so he is definitely here to remake, his area at least, if not America, in his own image, in their own image.
Yeah, I think this raises this whole anti-Israeli movement that has happened here. And with that, we get a whole host of issues that come along with this. This is the cancel culture, that developed on many of America's most elite campuses in shutting down alternative forms of speech. It's this hostility trying to brand Israel as a colonialist, settler colonialist kind of nation, which I think is used in much the same way it's been used here in America to try and delegitimize the basic foundational Western ideals, classical liberalism, the ideas that, we're going back to the 1700s, the 1800s, that kind of thing, which basically were the things that lifted society up out of poverty that had existed, throughout human history. For the first time, we started to see higher rates of growth, an emerging middle class, significant upward mobility, and all these things. But we've had this reactionary response to that, which is trying to tear down those basic ideals of classical liberalism in order to build some new kind of state, which is predicated on significantly more government control, political appointments, as overriding the idea of meritocracy. And that's in the United States. And in Israel, it's being used to try and delegitimize the basis of Israel as a state and basically make them responsible for the attacks and the atrocities that have been visited upon them, most significantly the October 7th attacks, in recent history here. So unfortunately, I think that's it. And the fact that he's doing so well in New York, I think does shine a light into where a significant part of the political system in the United States is right now.
Okay. It's very disheartening to see that this peace that was hoped for the Middle East, for Israel specifically with Gaza, has kind of sort of erupted with them, like literally killing people. We have a little piece I might be able to put on the side, JT, but this, how do we ever negotiate with terrorists? And of course, this is what Prime Minister Netanyahu and Trump had feared, that you have to deal with people that keep their word.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to be disheartened. I think at the same time, it's very important for us to step back and realize we are potentially in the midst of some major changes that won't come easily, But I think, there is a shift taking place in the bigger picture of things and in the more immediate picture with respect to these recent negotiations on the peace accords. The bigger picture issue goes back to the Abraham Accords, which were signed during the first Trump administration, which basically changed the dynamic in the Middle East from what had historically kind of been Israel against the Arab world and into a model where we started to see a number of Arab countries sign a formal agreement to create relationship with Israel and by extension with the United States to move in a peaceful direction that could help them diversify their economies, move away from oil dependency, move more into the modern world and lift more of their citizens up, into a higher standard of living. And I think that's potentially a groundbreaking development there. And I think here recently, my sense of what was happening is Netanyahu, very understandably, and I think correctly, believed that there could be no lasting peace if Hamas was allowed to continue to hold its power base over Gaza, that we might have a short-term period, but then we would go back to the way things had always been, especially since Iran still controls their oil fields and they're still funding this. And I think, much to his credit, Trump came into the equation and didn't say, no, you can't do that. But he said, first, we're going to give peace an opportunity to happen. And so they brought the Arab community in to sign on to the idea of an Arab solution for Gaza, where Egypt, potentially Saudi Arabia, Jordan, other countries could establish a peaceful regime to oversee Gaza in replace of Hamas. Hamas agreed to leave, and we became involved, and Israel agreed to withdraw some. So this totally changes the dynamics of things. Now, if Hamas refuses to leave and they continue to attack, now what we've done is totally change the dynamics of the discussion. Now it's not like, oh, this is just Israel being overly aggressive and killing innocent citizens as they wage this war for too long. Now what we've got is a coalition where there's a range of potential options before we get to that point. One is Hamas abides by the agreement, which so far, it maybe doesn't look so good, but we'll see. If they don't, then there's the potential, maybe for the United States, along with some of these Arab countries, to step in and resolve the problem without Israel having to do so. And if that fails to take place, then Israel can step in as a last resort to try and remove Hamas. And I think the dynamics of the discussion have been totally changed by the nature of this peace agreement, whether it lasts or it doesn't.
Yes, I appreciate what you're saying, and in fact, the way that you're framing it is actually could be considered good news. I mean, we've got to move forward. For us that follow the biblical guidelines of potentially what goes on in the last days, it's not really a pretty picture of people leaving Israel at peace. It's kind of, there's going to be wars, rumors of wars, and then ultimately, an Armageddon of sorts. And so, at this point, we just stand steady with Israel. Have you been surprised at some of the, major podcasters, major media influences turning against Israel?
Yes, I have been shocked by it, in fact. I think it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, where you have this alignment between a certain faction, which is, very significantly represented on American elite campuses, but also in American politics, which has become very anti-Western civilization. And so they're looking for reasons and justifications to try and tear down these elements of that we talked about, kind of the classical liberal ideals, that started to lift the United States, Europe, and the world as a whole up out of the poverty that we had been in for so long, because they want to change the system. And there's those ideals on the campuses, and then there are these anti-Israel ideas coming out of the Middle East, which I think are basically fomented by, the source is Iran. They have the oil revenues. Their objective is to spread their influence and control over the Middle East. They are very much against the idea of obviously Israel's presence, but also some of the liberalization that's taken place in Saudi Arabia here lately, and the idea that more of these countries might align with Israel and the United States, which would totally shift the balance of power between Iran and these peace-seeking Arab countries and Israel, which is the direction, hopefully the bigger picture direction of where we're going here. But I think that's the real source of hostility. But they're using these other ideas, trying to tag Israel as a settler colonialist kind of country that is too aggressively attacking and killing innocent Arab citizens as a justification for what really amounts to their desire to expand their power base through their extremism and terrorism.
Wow. Thank you so much for that insight. I don't want to let you go. You're a money guy. And gold and silver, I'm just wondering what you think about it as a commodity, as something for people to invest in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, two thoughts there. One is gold and silver are speculative investments, commodity investments, which means that unlike a company, if there's a company out there that we could use Google or somebody like that, and we could estimate what their earnings are going to be over time and use that to calculate what in the investment world you'd call the intrinsic value of Google. We could say it's worth X dollars per share. You can't do that with gold and silver because they're primarily speculative commodities. So I don't have an opinion on whether they're too high or they're too low, but they do act like a predictive market. And I think this huge run-up that we've seen is basically the market of people who are speculating in those commodities, telling us that there is a big danger that the Federal Reserve is going to continue printing too much money, that inflation will stay high or move higher as we try and deal with these significant budget deficits. Whether that's already reflected in the price or not is hard to tell. That's the speculative parts that you can't tell really. But I think that's what the markets are telling us.
Wow. Okay. I'm happy to get that from you for free, and I appreciate it. And of course, anyone can go on your Substack as well for free and can follow you because you're watching everything that is important to wealth and finances. And we also appreciate that you weigh in on world issues. And thank you for your perspective today. It's actually been encouraging, really. We are in difficult times, but we've got a framework that we can move forward, and I think that's positive, and I appreciate your words today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Be blessed. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Todd. The Word of God in Jeremiah 31 says this, in verse 31. 31. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness. I'm just going to underline that. And I will remember their sins no more. This is what the Lord says, He who appoints the sun to shine by day, who decrees the moon and the stars to shine by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord Almighty is His name. Only if these decrees vanish from my sight, declares the Lord, will Israel ever cease being a nation before me. Amen. God is saying, only if The moon and the stars and the sun cease to do what they do. Only if that stops happening will Israel cease to be a nation. Let me ask you something. Did you see the sun today? Have you seen the moon recently? Have you stared at the beautiful stars? The covenant of God remains with the people of Israel because his covenant remains with the moon, the stars, and the sun. He put the worlds into orbit. He is God. You can't help but believe in a God when you look at the stars in the sky, the heavens, the absolutely incredible planets, the universe, the way that he did what he did that no one else can do. That moon can't move, or basically we die. The sun can't leave us, or basically we die. And God's got a covenant with all of us that we're here. And until there is a new heavens and a new earth, God's covenant with the stars, the moon, and the sunshine remains. And his covenant remains with his people, the Jews. God bless. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.lauralynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.